We tend to think of populism as an aberration, and much talk exists of the rise of the far right. This supposes that what we are seeing currently, with the Front National in France, or the FPO in Austria, or the PVV in the Netherlands, is a new and novel phenomena, or more erroneously, somehow similar to 1930s Germany. Of course, both views are wrong. Really, there hasn't been a sudden surge in the radical right, at least not from nowhere, as commonly seems to be suggested. Nor are these parties sudden blips or flashes that will soon dissipate. No, these parties have often been a frequent fixture of European politics for many decades and have been part of government. In Finland, populists are in government, in Denmark, populists are providing parliamentary support, and in Norway, populists are currently in a coalition with the Conservative Party of the country. It is to Norway that we shall now turn. The Norwegian Progress Party, similar to its Danish counterpart that will be covered soon, started as a protest party against taxation. In the wake of the 1972 EU referendum in Norway, in which Norwegians narrowly voted to stay out of the European community, a controversial and quirky figure named Anders Lange founded a new party. Lange, a dog kennel owner and editor, gave the party the catchy name of Anders Lange's Party for a Strong Reduction in Taxes, Duties and Public Intervention. For obvious reasons, this became abbreviated to the Anders Lange Party. The party gained little respect from the Norwegian political heavyweights of the time. The dominant Conservative and Labour Party saw this newcomer as little more than a joke, and it's not too hard to see why. In Lange's televised appearances, he could often be seen wielding a Viking sword and drinking eggnog. He surprised everyone by achieving 5% of the vote in the 1973 elections, although was largely considered to be a flash party, and so still not a viable threat to the establishment. It was clear that the party was incredibly Lange-centred, obvious in party name but also in structure. The party was disorganised, unprofessional, and wholly oriented around the whims of its leader. Some within the party disagreed with this approach to politics, most notably here Carl Hagen, who split with Lange after the elections and founded his own party, the Reform Party, in 1973. By 1975, Lange had died and Carl Hagen came to front his former party in 1978, and by doing so, managed to consolidate the splinter group surrounding the ALP. He was to take the party in a very different direction. Immigration wasn't a salient issue in Norway throughout the 70s and much of the 80s. However, I should say that an important white paper was passed the same year as the formation of the Anders Lange Party. In 1973, a bill was proposed in the Norwegian Parliament for a temporary stop on all immigration by the beginning of 1975. This was a response to an increasing number of non-Nordic workers entering the country. The bill was passed in Parliament and became a permanent fixture, with exceptions allowed for required workers of exceptional skill, limited refugees and family reunifications. The Anders Lange Party itself had little to say on immigration also. Everything changed towards the mid-80s as the number of immigrants rapidly increased and the immigration issue became increasingly politicized. At the forefront of this was the Norwegian Progress Party. The Anders Lange Party for a Strong Reduction in Taxes, Duties and Public Intervention became the Norwegian Progress Party in 1977. Under the direction of Carl Hagen, the party remained quiet for the first decade of his leadership, but gradually underwent ideological and structural transformation. Party leadership became more hierarchical and structured, and immigration became a stronger focus. This was mostly in response to a huge increase in immigration come the mid-80s. The party began to reformulate its arguments around the welfare state. Whereas Anders Lange had argued against the welfare state in general, Carl Hagen set about deconstructing the welfare state's preferential treatment of migrants. In 1988, he stated, "There exists at present a number of special arrangements that immigrants benefit from and which are paid for by the taxpayers of the country. These special arrangements should, in our opinion, be removed. They cost the taxpayers money, means that alternatively could have been used to help weak groups like disabled, hard-up elderly and sick people. These special arrangements have the same responsibility for that some have negative and unfortunate attitudes towards immigrants." The emphasis on the elderly, disabled and sick is crucial as it was to become central to their party platform. In the 1987 local elections, they had their first electoral breakthrough, with over 10% of the vote, partly due to the increased salience of immigration and also perhaps due to the controversial Mustafa letter that Hagen read out as part of his campaign. The letter was allegedly sent to Hagen by a Muslim resident of Denmark, although this has been questioned via lawsuit. 2 years later, in the national elections, the Progress Party became the third largest party in the country. This new party direction, although a harbinger of success, didn't come without its drawbacks. The party wasn't an anti-immigration party in origin, and many within the party didn't agree with the new emphasis. Parallels can be drawn with the FPO in this instance, which suffered from numerous ruptures after Haider's ascension in 1986, as Liberals left the party in droves. The same happened with the Progress Party, which, initially being an anti-taxation party, had many Liberals who felt uncomfortable with the party's changing focus. They got their way in the early 90s as the party shifted emphasis away from immigration for the 1993 elections, but they were punished severely at the ballot as a result. In 1994, Hagen held a party convention and clearly sided with the more nationalist faction of the party. After this, most liberally minded members left. This was to be the beginning of a quick radicalization process that took place throughout the 90s. Economically, the party managed to retain its neoliberalism whilst also supporting the welfare state. The party was able to do this through questioning the received Norwegian wisdom of keeping oil funds in reserve. Norway is one of the largest oil exporters in the world, and the Progress Party was simultaneously able to promote increased public spending while reducing taxation through demanding the use of this money for Norwegians. For example, in 2001, the party slogan became "We can afford" to illustrate this. This was coupled with an increasing proletarianization of the party. Competition with the Labour Party became explicit, and party slogans often closely mirrored each other. For example, in the 1999 parliamentary election, the Labour Party slogan was "Sick and Elderly First", whereas the Progress Party's was "Elderly and Sick First". Not only that, but the party opened its headquarters in Youngstorget, Oslo, the historical centre of the Labour movement, and literally next door to the Labour Party's office. Immigration returned to the forefront though, and many saw the Progress Party as a single-issue party, ignoring the economic message. The party tended to frame a rejection of immigration as a means to avoid conflict between different ethnic groups. The party election programme stated in 1997, "There is reason to fear that a continued immigration of asylum seekers, only approximating the extent one has had in later years, will lead into serious antagonisms between ethnic groups in Norway. It is not immoral to argue that one must react against this immigration in order to prevent conflicts. It is neither immoral to argue that one should prevent too rapid change of the unified character our population possesses. It is incorrect to call this racism when it is not based on ideas about some races being more valuable than others." This successfully helped the FrP to mobilise its former supporters on the basis of anti-immigration, but also a new base of Labour supporters dissatisfied with the party's unwillingness to politicise immigration. On top of that, the privatisation of mass media, crucially in the form of TV station TV2, gave Hagen a platform that hugely favoured his form of antagonistic populism. Private media tends to provide a successful platform for populists, not necessarily because they are sympathetic, but because they are driven by traffic and viewership. Populists tend to be outspoken, outrageous, and highly attractive for competitive media as they attract interest. This connection between the Progress Party and TV2 became so strong that by 2001, debates were taking place on whether TV2 promoted populism as a result of a TV2 poll that found 97% of its viewers saw Islam as a threat to Western values. All in all, the party post-1997 election was the most popular non-socialist party in Norway, beating out the Conservatives in the election. This was all well and good. The party had demonstrated it could get votes, sure, but in a country where politics is proportional and coalitions necessary, the party had to adopt a more congenial approach to its contemporaries. Carl Hagen himself was open to the idea of compromise and working with other parties. His views were also somewhat moderate compared to the other more extreme elements within the party. Nonetheless, it was these elements that Hagen had to shun out of necessity. In a proportional system, gaining votes is basically pointless unless other parties are willing to partner with you once the votes are in and the campaign finished. This came to the fore in the year 2000, as Hagen came into conflict with the party's Oslo branch, which was accused of trying to unseat him, but was also home to some of the more extreme nationalistic strains. Øystein Hedström was thought to be the candidate who would replace Hagen, who himself belonged to the more radical nationalist wing of the party, once claiming that, "I have studied integration policies all over Europe and it does not work anywhere. Where Christians and Muslims, Jews and Arabs and other different cultures live together, life is characterized by murder, drugs and other types of crime. All in all, 16 members of the party were expelled, but Hedström remained, provided he was less outspoken on immigration. This was then quickly followed by a resignation by action clause in the party's membership, whereby if any party member criticised the party publicly, this would be taken as a tendered resignation and acted upon accordingly. All of this can be seen as an attempt to make the party more attractive to prospective coalition partners. As Hagen noted in 2000, "We are talking about straightening things up in the party, to take into account our political opponents in other parties who think that we are disorderly. If this is the reason for not wanting to have anything to do with us, we need to get rid of those bad things." The party wasn't exactly under a cordon sanitaire or anything, and on the local level, even Labour Party politicians had worked with them. That said, national level cooperation was a different story until 2001, when support of the Progress Party was necessary to pass the budget of the Christian Democrat-led government from 2001 to 2006. In 2006, the Conservative Party agreed that all non-socialist parties should start cooperating, a move that would include cooperation with the Progress Party. The culmination of these mainstreaming efforts can be seen in Siv Jensen becoming party leader in 2006. This wasn't to make the party more attractive to voters per se, but rather to other political parties who may wish to enter coalition at a later date. Jensen did her best to separate herself from other populist parties throughout Europe, including the neighbouring Sweden Democrats, the Finns Party and the Danish People's Party, who she regarded as extremist. The manifesto was moderated, increased attention was paid to economic centrism, elderly care, taxation and public services. Immigration was toned down but still important, with concerns voiced mostly through the party's public platform rather than through the manifesto. Internal documents given to party members reaffirmed the importance of cooperation with non-socialist parties and to appear serious, responsible and thorough. The transition worked, and in 2013 the party entered coalition with the Conservatives with the support of the Christian Democratic Party and the Liberals. Both the Democratic Party and the Liberals have refused to be a part of government with the Progress Party, but the Progress Party have themselves stated that they would not support a government they were excluded from, essentially making them indispensable to the Conservatives. The problem is, both the Conservatives and the Progress Party have had to make concessions to ensure their support, which is difficult considering the Centre Democrats and Liberals often campaigned for the opposite of what the Progress Party campaigned for. This has required the Progress Party to make huge compromises on ideological positions, some of which are central to their platform, such as oil exploration and banning the naturalization of refugees and their children. This isn't to say the party hasn't been able to do anything. Inheritance tax has been abolished, it's harder for immigrants to gain access to benefits, and increased room for private healthcare has been granted. Problem is, this hardly helps alleviate the public perception that the party has sold out, given up its core policy points for power. This hypocrisy can be illustrated with road tolls. It may seem like a silly example, but one of the party's policies was the abolition of them. This never passed and tolls still persist. Ironically though, the Norwegian transport minister is a Progress Party politician, and chances are she's had to inaugurate a new road complete with a toll booth. Such obvious and outward shows of hypocrisy, however justified they may be in a country whose politics is coalition dominated, is devastating for public opinion. New parliamentary elections will be taking place on the 11th of September 2017. Since being in office, thousands of Progress Party members have left the party, seeing the party elite as out of touch with the common member and voter. The party has demonstrated it can be in government without causing a stir, but losing its oppositional and populist approach that afforded it its popularity with voters in the first place will severely limit the party's ability to draw from its support base. This is a problem populists face repeatedly, especially in coalitions. Compromise is necessary, but the precise appeal of populism tends to be its confrontational style of no compromise. This has increasing relevance now as the Dutch elections draw nearer. Geert Wilders has been able to harness populist support, but has completely neglected building bridges with other parties. The Norwegian Progress Party, perhaps, went too far in the other direction. Thanks for watching this video. If you like what you see, please do consider donating via Patreon. Massive thank you to my existing patrons for all their support. Please remember to subscribe and like if you enjoy my content. If not, hit dislike and give me some criticism. Anyway, thanks for everything, and until next time.